Well, Bennett, you're
Really important.
34. We got a 34-year-old.
You qualify, close enough.
I was actually buddies with Ty. I hadn't seen him in a few years. Back when I was in D.C., he was out there for a short stint.
Ty finally got married 2 weeks ago at the age of 37. We were so proud.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Had a COVID wedding on the farm with, started off with 300 guests. Then we cut it to 200 and we ended up with about 60. And 2 weeks have gone by and nobody got sick. So we're very relieved with that. But it was a lovely wedding on the farm, and he married a great girl, and we're just so glad it finally happened.
Well, congratulations to him.
Thank
I know he and Jack were in law school together at Ole Miss, so I know I'll pass that on to young Jack too.
Where is young Jack now?
He is in Atlanta. And he and his wife and 1-year-old son have started a new marketing firm called Read and Read Marketing. They're entrepreneurially setting out on their own kind of pandemic generated new ventures. So I'm wishing them well.
So no law career for him, huh?
No, he said he didn't. None of his friends who are in these big firms seem to enjoy it.
I've met almost no lawyer in a big firm who enjoys, or a small firm either.
Yeah.
Or the guys lined up in the small shops around the square. Those guys are starving to death. And it's been I finished law school almost 40 years ago, and I practiced for 10 years, and now I write about lawyers. I've met very few over the years who enjoy what they do. It's a grind wherever you are.
Well, I think we have been live. Actually, people have been eavesdropping on this kind of conversation. But welcome back to Gumtree Bookstore, John.
Always a pleasure, guys. Always a pleasure.
I was gonna just put up, and I know this you can't read it because this is on a mirror, but this is a picture of you coming here in 1993 with the client. You're looking good.
Yeah.
And it said. In 1989, we invite our customers to come meet an unknown Northeast Mississippi writer who had just completed his first novel, The Time to Kill. Today, we invite you again to help us make welcome in Tupelo this same young writer. No longer unknown, he is now America's most popular novelist. Back to Tupelo. So now, welcome back again.
Thank you. I like the word young. It seemed a long time ago.
Yeah, well, hey,
So I remember when I asked you once, you used to have the Hollywood, 3-day growth thing.
Right.
And I asked you one time when you were here, I said, how do you get that thing to keep looking good? And you said, which I love the answer. You said, well, I don't feel like I should wear it to church. So I shave every Sunday morning and then just let it grow for a week. And I shave every Sunday morning, go to church, clean shaven. I thought that was great.
I did it for years. I would shave every Sunday morning, and I still hate to shave. But I realized a few years ago that, I need to do all I can to keep as much gray off my head as possible. So I shave 3 times a week now instead of 1.
That's not bad. It's not bad.
I'm going to take this off, but I wanted to show you because I know you've been interested in this too. The mask I'm wearing is the new state of Mississippi flag. We hope that
I've not seen that. I've not seen that.
Well, it's a magnolia with the stars. Obviously, it's blue, red, and gold. It's got 1 star representing the indigenous people, the Indians that were here, and then 20 stars for Mississippi was the 20th state, and then the magnolia. But the legislature, as you know, finally got rid of the flag this spring, way too long, but finally got that done. The governor signed it. The flag commission chose a new design, and that's on the ballot November 3rd for the majority plus 1 vote of the citizens to vote to accept this as the new flag. So I'm using this as an opportunity, if anybody's watching us, to urge them to do that. We certainly are supporting it.
Why is there a necessity to have a vote by the people?
That was, I don't want to say a cynical, I'm going to say a strategic move on the part of the lieutenant governor and the speaker to say there'll still be a vote, because the thing they were fighting against were people saying we voted for this flag in 2001. We deserve to have the whole state vote on it again.
Okay.
I just wanted to
course.
pass that up.
Of it's a up or down vote on this one flag. And if it's voted down, then the flag commission has to go back and pick another flag and you have an up or down vote on it. It's not the most efficient thing in the world. So we really need to go ahead and vote this in and be done with it.
Well, it's the first time I've seen the flag. I think it's beautiful, and I vote yes.
That boy, thank you. Well, I know people more interested in your book, but I did want to get that out there. I knew you were for that. Our store was briefly boycotted in 2001 when my dad and William Winter led the commission to change the flag back then, 19 years ago. So it's been a while, but hopefully we'll get it done this time.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
He said he got on that commission because of unknown sins that he did not know he committed. But, that's why they put him on there. But it's a tough year.
You got to hope that in Mississippi and in most places, a lot has changed in 20 years. I have the feeling that things have changed dramatically in the past couple of years. It seems like there's more of a dialogue. There's more protest, obviously, peaceful protest. There are a lot of things are changing rapidly, and it seems like we're finally doing what we should have done a long time ago, and that's face some of these issues that we have, conveniently ignored for many years. So good stuff.
Well, let's talk about your book. Scott and I both got a chance to read it this weekend. We sneaked a copy, and I can honestly say I think this is your tour de force. I mean, I think it's my favorite book that you have written. I absolutely do. I mean, you seem it's so natural. I mean, it's a small town legal thriller. The characters are so well developed. I felt like the Josie and Kiara and Drew, the Gamble family it's almost like a Larry Brown family wrapped in a legal thriller.
Right.
So congratulations. It's really a terrific book.
Well, thanks, Jack. I'm glad you like it. You're a very discerning reader, and we've talked about a lot of books over the years. It feels very natural when I set a story in Ford County, and this is the third Jake novel. I've been back to that place for other parts of other books, but that's kind of where I'm from. I know those people. I know the history, the culture, the religion, food, habits. That's what I grew up with, and when I write about Ford County, I feel like I'm very much at home. When I write about Jake, he started off 35 years ago as a very autobiographical character because I was that lawyer in a small town in Mississippi trying to get ahead and struggling and dreaming of the big case, again, trying to pay the bills and pretty wife at home having babies. And we lived that life for 10 years in DeSoto County, and we had a very good life. And so I look back with great fondness on that period of time. But when it comes to the fiction, the more stories, oftentimes I'll get an idea for a book, the next legal thriller, whenever it's coming. And I'll ask myself, could I set this story in Ford County? I kind of always start off there. Most of them, the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely no, you can't. It doesn't fit there. It belongs in Washington or some other place. But I'm always looking for stories to set in that place because they're so much easier for me to write, especially the ones about the law and courtroom drama. So it feels very natural being back there.
Jake is still broke. I guess you feel like that's where you would be if you'd stayed an attorney. He never gets ahead.
Scott, I've often wondered in the past 30 years what would have happened when I was writing A Time to Kill. It was a 3-year period, and many times I put it down and didn't want to pick it up, didn't want to go back to it. I used to walk into bookstores and see all the big New York Times releases on the wall, books everywhere. And I would stop and I would say, who wants to hear from me? What do I have to add to all of this? And so I'd quit for a while. And Renee would always kind of, nudge me back to the table to write some more. And but I've often wondered, what would have happened if I had not finished A Time to Kill or not written The Firm, if I'd quit. And I think I probably would have become a judge. I kind of had my eye on a judge's seat up in that part of the state. I had been elected twice to the state legislature, so I had a pretty good base politically, and I was there was a judge about to retire, and I was, thinking about, and if that had happened, if I'd been elected as a state circuit judge in the early 1990s, when Clinton and Obama came along, I like to think I would have been in a position to kind of lobby for a federal judgeship. And that would have been my dream job, I think. And as I got older, would be on the federal bench. And it happened to Mike Mills, a buddy of mine from law school. Mike's been a federal judge. He and I served together for 2 terms in the House, and we're the same age. So it could have happened, but I don't spend a lot of time dwelling on what might have been. I've had such a wonderful change of events, and still being able to do what I thoroughly enjoy doing.
Well, I don't want to sound too much like it's a wonderful life, but if you'd done that, you would have come to Tupelo and said, "Where's the Gumtree bookstore?" And they go, "Oh, it didn't make it. You didn't become a writer, and they didn't make it." So I think I can speak for a number of independent bookstores that are really happy that you didn't become a federal judge.
Well, one of the things I was, and again, obviously it's a novel, so we're not going to talk about the action in the book much, but just again, the culture and how just how natural it feels for those of us around here who will read it. Just some of the things growing up, for example, when they're driving around, they start to play games to get their minds off. One of the games they play are counting cows. I hadn't thought about counting cows as a car game in 30 years, but we used to do that. My mother's from Corinth. And when we go up to visit her parent from Tupelo to Corinth, we would each take one side of the, it was a 2-lane road, Highway 45 North, and one of us would take the left side and one would take the right. And we'd be counting cows. If I was on the other side from my dad and we had a big, there were a lot of cows on that side, I'd tell Dad, just slow down, slow down, slow down. We would, and everybody else would always yell, you're going too fast. They're not that many. I mean, it was, you don't do that anymore. Biggersville used to be a place we used to be really cognizant.
And then your brother or your sister would cheat and count too much, and they get in a fight. Your parents do anything they can to keep you quiet. We had a carload of kids, and so they were always coming up with these silly games to keep us occupied, so we'd be fighting the back seat. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, well, I love that.
They made me hold my breath through Biggersville to see if I could. I think it was just to get me quiet for a minute and a half. But
I hope you'd pass out probably.
I did. Well, I could now. It's gotten bigger, but I used to get hold my breath all the way through Biggersville. Wasn't that hard. Hey, I do want to tell you one thing. I noticed. I'm a numbers guy, and I was looking back in June 28th of '89 is when you signed my copy of Time to Kill, and so I just did some looking back. It was a $19 book. Now this one's a $30 book. That is 1.87% increase a year. So you're actually a better value now than you were back then because you've increased it less than inflation.
Well, I'm happy. I'll call a publisher right now and tell them that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty good.
Could charge more.
If you look at baseball, one of your favorite sports, they've gone up a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You're always seem to be prescient on what's happening around the country, even the world, and some of the topics that you have a long forward view. There's some of these themes that of course you come back to again too, but some of the things like grand juries, one of the comments in there, grand juries seem to be a rubber stamp for the prosecutors. Some of those ideas that have been mentioned before in some of your legal thrillers, but you want to comment on any of that?
Well, I try to, not necessarily with this book, but I always try to discuss a timely issue throughout the course of the novel and present both sides. The issue in this book is, should we really put 16-year-old kids on trial for capital murder? In 1990, when the story is set in Mississippi and in almost all death states, it was not uncommon to put teenagers on trial for capital murder. About 10 years ago, the Supreme Court stopped that. They said it was a cruel and unusual punishment. And a few years later, they stopped giving teenagers life without parole because that's basically a death sentence in prison. And so those two decisions changed juvenile law quite a bit. But that's, those are recent cases. This is 1990. And so the issue is how do you what's the proper punishment for a kid like Drew Gamble who pulled the trigger? And his victim is just as dead if he pulled the trigger or an adult pulled the trigger. As far as the victim is concerned, the victim's family, what's the difference? You've lost your life, you've lost a loved one. They don't really care how old the killer is. But we shouldn't put kids on trial for capital murder. So what then becomes the appropriate punishment? It's not fair to run them through the youth court system at the age of 18, lose jurisdiction, and they walk out after committing a heinous crime. So that's a problem we have in our system. We don't deal with these kids properly. And I wanted to explore that. I didn't answer the question. The book does not answer the question, what is a fair punishment for a very, very awful crime? And so, that's something I want the readers to think about a little bit. But again, I don't know the answer myself, so I couldn't answer it in the book.
One of the legal issues that I personally have had the opportunity to wrestle with a little bit is the request from Jake for notable townspeople to sign a petition for change of venue when there's been a popular victim. Yeah. And I had that exact same opportunity once, without going into, of course, the names or anything. But I had to think about it. I signed it because I thought it was true. I didn't think the defendant probably could get a fair trial in Lee County. But it is that was a very real legal issue that people deal with a lot, I suppose, on change of venue.
It's very rare in criminal cases to change venue, and especially after a notorious awful crime, the defense lawyer wants to get the case out of that jurisdiction somewhere else, and judges are very reluctant to do that. It's also very rare for an appellate court to reverse a criminal conviction on the grounds that venue should have been changed. They should have had the case, somewhere else. So I wanted to explore that a little bit. And when you have these hearings, the defense lawyer makes files a motion to change venue, and you've got to support that with the testimony of people in the community who are well known or not well known, or live there for a long time, various diverse people who either come testify in court or file affidavits saying, I don't think a fair trial is possible, or I do believe we can get a fair trial here. And so that was a very realistic, I think, change of venue hearing. I haven't done one in 40 years, so I don't know for sure.
You got a lot of underlying themes in this book. I don't know if they evolved through the process of writing it, or if you have those in your outline. But one of which I'd like to know the answer to that. But one of the most significant ones to me was just this realization of how enormously hard it is for poor people to get a break in any system, but especially the legal system. It seems like things are just stacked against them from the start. And then the other thing I want you to comment on is, and I couldn't find if this is actually true or not, but is it true that the attorneys only get back in 1990 only got $1,000 for
yeah.
That just sounded crazy to me.
That was the fee when I was a lawyer in South Haven for a capital murder case, and it's I think it's still the law. I called one of my old buddies in Hernando, a death penalty lawyer, and he said, "Yeah, it's still the fee," and it's been attacked several times by lawyers, because it's so unfair. It's hard to get an equal playing field in a lot of criminal trials because the state has enormous resources with lawyers and policemen and experts and whatever they need, really. And the defense is left with a poorly paid lawyer. You have to fight and beg to get money for an expert. It's really not a fair system. Now, the thing about it has changed dramatically because now in most serious crimes, I think there's some, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's a state like indigent defense counsel that's paid for by the state, and you get much better representation. And so I think that aspect has changed. And nowadays, if Drew Gamble pulled the trigger at the age of 16, he wouldn't be put on trial. But if he was 20, he would have much better lawyers paid for by the state.
That's interesting. Well, one of the things that again, kind of comes from this Northeast Mississippi culture that I thought was, that I enjoyed, was at church people at their best. I won't say our best, although I'd hope to be at my best occasionally, but the people of the Good Shepherd Bible Church really come across again as truly generous spirited, merciful people. And it's easy to knock the hypocrisy of church people. I recognize that too, and there's certainly that out there. But I thought it was reassuring for you to highlight some of the goodness of some of these small, in this case, a small town, small church, really rallying around this family. And you don't see that much in this kind of legal thriller situation too much.
Yeah, I like the. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. I like the young minister who stepped forward, and this church tried to take in this family because they were living in the area, and they were living in an abusive situation, and a lot of folks knew it. And so the minister reached out to them. He got them into church. They didn't want to always come, and back and forth because they didn't feel like they belonged. Once the tragedy occurred, the mother and daughter, Drew went to jail to await trial. The mother and daughter had no place to go. They had no family. They'd been homeless before. She'd been to prison twice before. The kids had been in orphanages. They've had a long, sad life to be so young. And the mother made her share of mistakes, and she regrets those. She's working hard to keep her family together. And like Scott said, she gets knocked down at every turn because being poor is it's very difficult to fight. And she had her paychecks garnished, and she her used car foreclosed on, all the things that poor people run into. And when I was a lawyer, that's what that was my work. All my clients were poor. They sure couldn't pay me. But I learned how rough these people have it. And fortunately, the church, small country church, independent church, stepped up and took them in. They lived in the church for 2 or 3 months. The church fed them. The church clothed them. The church. That's what churches are supposed to do. That's what Jesus taught. That's what Christians are supposed to do. And so I really like that aspect of the book.
Well, I did too.
Well, it's easy to find those people that say they are, that don't do the job and don't walk the walk, but it's really nice to see the people that do. And there are a lot of people out there that do walk the walk. So it really was refreshing to see someone portrayed in a book actually doing what they are supposed to be doing. I thought it was a great storyline in the book.
Yeah.
And to the extent that this is still semi-autobiographical, your wife, Renee, ought to enjoy what a wonderful character Carla, Jake's wife, is in this book. She certainly comes out as a real hero. And I won't go into part of what she's interested in too, family-wise, but
Renee has always had an interest in Carla from the very beginning, because when I started writing A Time to Kill in 1985, Renee read the first chapter on longhand on a legal pad and encouraged me to write some more. And as the book progressed, she said, your female characters are really weak. I've heard that more than once over the years, believe me. And so she takes a real interest in my female characters, and she'll even say things like, it's time to have a female lead because more women buy books than men, and blah blah blah. And so I listened to her. But with Carla, she's always felt sort of attached to that character, because people when they see Jake, they think of me, or they used to before Matthew McConaughey came along. Now he's Jake, okay? But she's always had an interest in Carla, and she's very territorial about what happens to Carla in all the books.
Well, speaking of Matthew McConaughey, it sounds like online he's auditioning to have a few wrinkles removed, have a little Botox, and come back as Jake in this. He's certainly excited about the book coming out.
We did a 1-hour Zoom last Thursday, Matthew and I, for some I think it was some nonprofit of his in California. And it's the first time we'd spoken to each other in 25 years.
Really?
And I thanked him for reading that section, for to help promote the book. And we went on to social media, and it got a zillion hits from around the world. And I said, this guy is still really famous. But we had such a wonderful time talking about A Time to Kill, and I was not aware of how hard he had lobbied to get the leading role, and he was unknown, so they weren't going to give it to him. And they had this all-star cast raring to go down in Canton, also known as Clanton, to film.
Yeah.
And they had Samuel Jackson and Sandra Bullock and Ashley Judd and Oliver Platt and Kiefer Sutherland and Donald Sutherland. They had this wonderful cast with no Jake, no star. And they had the budget, they had the screenplay, they were on site ready to film. And Joel Schumacher, the wonderful director who died a few months ago, came up with a couple of names of actors I didn't think would fit. I had the ultimate right to veto. We kept that in the contract. And so things were not going well as far as casting. And at the last moment, Joel said, time out, let's be friends. I got somebody in mind. And Matthew was filming another movie. Joel hauled him into the studio in Hollywood for a quick, screen test, and sent it to us. And this is 1995, so before internet, before everything. And they sent us the old VHF big tape, and it came in by FedEx, and Renee and I were waiting on it when it got there. We plugged it in the VCR, and there was Matthew in his office, smoking a cigar, talking, like he talks. He talks like we talk. There's no fake accent. And Renee said, she said, I love this guy. And I said, yeah. And he was really good at the screen test. And I walked to the phone, I called Joel Schumacher, and I said, hey, Joel, we found our star. And so he and I then called Matthew, and we said, would you like to play Jake? And he said, I'll be there tomorrow. And Matthew told his version of that story last Thursday. We had never compared versions before, and they were the same. They were the same, and it was a wonderful time to catch up with him. The moderator asked Matthew if he would consider playing Jake again in A Time for Mercy. I was not about to ask that question. We have not, as far as I know, no one has approached Matthew. He does what he wants to do. And he was kind of coy. He said that should be considered. That's all he said, and let it go. But if, it's very simple. If Matthew wants to do it, the movie will get made. If he chooses not to, then maybe somebody else will do it.
Well, it really was a great movie, and it was impossible to read this book without visualizing all of those characters.
Yeah.
And Oliver Platt was, every single one of those,
right.
Every one of them was in my mind as I was reading the book. It kind of helps because it really does
sure
kind of ground the entire process of reading the book. Sure. There was somebody that sent in a question. We've had a few questions, and one of them was about that. This car said, I reread A Time to Kill and then watched the movie. The ending was a lot different. Do you have say-so on how the movies are changed from the book?
Never. If I insisted on that much control, the movies would never get made. Seriously, I don't know how to make movies. I don't want to learn. It's not what I do. What we try to do is deal with producers and directors that we have dealt with before or that we know and trust. And there are a lot of talented people out there. And, then we sell the film rights and get out of the way. And I may occasionally retain the right to veto a couple of casting choices like Matthew in A Time to Kill. I think I've done that one other time. I can't recall what it was. But even then, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get wrapped up in that. I don't want to get caught up in the different version, somebody else's version of how that story should look. I've got my idea, and that's what I wrote. But I wrote the book. The movie is an entirely different medium. Let somebody else take that and run with it. And hey, look, guys, I've had 10 movies adapted from my books. 9 were fun to watch, including the documentary, The Innocent Man. I've been lucky with Hollywood. I've been very, very lucky with Hollywood. I would love to see all of my books adapted to film or television. Nowadays, it's all television because we all love a great TV series we can binge on. We all still love a great movie whenever we can go back to the theaters. So I'm actively trying to sell. I'm not actively doing anything. I write the stuff. We entertain questions and deals and whatever. I'm not saying no to anything, and I haven't in a long time because I want to see all the books adapted.
Well, this is the second book this year that's a sequel. The Camino Winds was one too. I know a lot of mystery writers have their one hero or their one protagonist that is 10 books in a row, the same setting, that sort of thing. Do you think this is just a little bit of a coincidence, or are there some other books that you wouldn't mind bringing back a young lawyer from wherever, Washington or Florida or New Orleans?
Yeah, well, you're right on point, Jack. You said Florida. I published a book 4 years ago called The Whistler, and it was about a young character named Lacey Stoltz who works for the Florida Board of Judicial Conduct, and her job is investigating claims or complaints against sitting judges. And that book was very popular because she was a 35-year-old, attractive female, and those characters are, we can see that. I'm seriously thinking about going back to Lacey for another book real soon. Renee likes the idea, and I think I have a story that will work. So yeah, I'll do that again. There was a book called Gray Mountain that came out 6 or 7 years ago, involved a young Wall Street lawyer who was sent off to Appalachia to do legal aid work because of the recession. And when she got there, she got involved with all the locals and realized how much poor people really needed legal help. And so we left her there. Her story was over, but she's still probably there. That would be a fun story to go back to, a fun character and fun setting to go back to. So I think about that, all the time. I'm always thinking about new ideas, and I have a list of ideas. Most of them never work, but I keep looking. But also characters. I want to do Jake again, but I can't do it, for several years. I don't have a story right now. Maybe I'll get one, but that's part of the process of being a writer. Is always looking for the new story, the new issue, I clip out magazine articles, newspaper articles all the time, and put them in a file, and usually never see them again, but I'm always looking.
Well, I know you mentioned book clubs. Those are certainly, for those of us who have independent bookstores, book clubs are important to us. We've got 3 or 4 bookstores, book clubs that buy their books from us rather than Amazon. And we've even had book clubs meet in our bookstore and that sort of thing too. So I think Renee's onto that as well. I know Lisa, my wife, and others, enjoy their book. They've missed that. In fact, she was talking with Sonia Jenkins, a friend of hers Sonia from Ole Miss days.
Law school together. Sonia was my buddy in law school.
Well, they were talking over that. She actually brought me a chocolate pie for my birthday. If she could sell those, she could quit her job as a lawyer and be a chocolate pie cook. That pie, by the 30 minutes after she left, it looked like 12 to 6 was already gone. It was just 6 to 12 left on it. But their book club is only met by Zoom, and they were both saying how ready they were just to get back together, talk about books, enjoy each other's company.
Sure.
That's smart. So anyway, as an independent bookseller, appreciate your nod on that.
Yeah. By the way, we've had a number of people that have sent us messages saying, "Good on Renee for keeping you honest on your women characters." It seems, yeah.
It takes work. Years ago, Renee said, "Look, you just don't know how to think like a woman." And I said, "Well, thank God I don't know how to think like a woman. I'm not supposed to. I don't want to. You got to help me out here."
What one other question was, and I think I know the answer to this because I saw your little video out in front of your workspace where you said that you never done that before, and you were talking about some things. I love that, by the way, but you also didn't let us inside the door. I noticed that. I wanted to go inside really badly. So somebody asked, James Thurkel asked, what is the last book you read and who is your favorite author?
Wow. The last book I read was something you don't want to read. I read a lot of nonfiction about legal issues, like prison reform, and books that you don't really want to recommend to people because they don't want to read them. The last really fun novel I read
Boy
was
from the Woods. Did you read The Boy from the Woods?
Harlan Coben. Yeah, I read that.
I read that because you recommended it on your video. It's wonderful.
Yeah, he's really good. I finished James Lee Burke's latest, The Perfect Cathedral. He's one of my favorites. What else in the world of fiction? What else have I read lately? Scott Turo's latest book came out a few months. It came out in the summertime. Harlan Coben, Ian Rankin, Michael Connolly, Ian McEwan, Louise Penny just finished her latest. Just bought Tana French's new book. She's a Irish detective writer, really, really good. I receive probably 10 books a week from publishers and editors and other writers as gifts, or often they're the advanced reading copies where someone wants a blurb, or so I just get flooded with books, and I try to give everybody 20 or 30 pages to read one, and so I'm starting a lot of books that I'll never finish, and also a lot of nonfiction.
I'll tell you a funny story. During a League of Women Voters mayoral debate in Tupelo about 20 years ago, the question was to each of the two candidates, what have you read lately, and what's your favorite book? And the first one said something like, well, I like sports. I wrote something, the Whitey Herzog book on the White Rat for the Cardinals manager, and maybe my favorite book is some sports book, maybe the Johnny Unitas story or something like that. And the second guy said, well, he said, I just read the Bible every night. The Bible's my favorite book. And the first guy said, well, I meant the Bible was my favorite book.
Of course, it's a rural South. You better name the Bible first.
Yeah, so he was just astonished that he got scooped on the Bible not being his favorite book. So that was funny.
And Sonny Jenkins just sent in that she was listening and appreciated the shout out.
Oh,
hey, Sonia used to bring those pies to the bookstore. Remember that? We'd be over there signing for 12 hours. She always popped in and said hello and got a big hug. And she would bring, I can't remember if she brought pies or brownies, but she was always hauling in food that was devoured.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she would promise to do that again if you ever are in the territory again and want to make a surprise visit. We'd love to.
Deal.
She's on. We'd have to stay for 12 hours again, but we would love to see you.
But I've got a technical question for you. What do you use to write your books? You use Microsoft, do you use Apple, do you use an app, do you use Word or Pages, or what technically, when you sit down to your computer, what do you open to write your book? Because a lot of people just write chapter by chapter and file them in a file on Word, and that seems to be not that great a way to do it.
Well, it's a big Mac desktop. It's it's a stand-up treadmill desk. I've gone from sitting to standing a few years back. I'm not sure if that's helped the fiction any, but it makes me feel better. I tried walking on the treadmill as I was writing. That's disastrous. I can't do two things at one time. I couldn't write. I had to stop. So I just stand there on the treadmill. Treadmill never moves, but I'm standing on top of it, and I have a big widescreen Mac. About 2 years ago, I switched from Word to Pages. I prefer the Apple software for a bunch of reasons. I've used Word for years, and I work offline in my little writing hut that you saw in the video. There's no phone, no fax, no internet, no music, no. It's kind of a dark place with it's kind of warm and cozy. Lots of books stacked everywhere, lots of junk stacked everywhere. But I work offline. I had this fear getting hacked into and people stealing stuff. It's happened to writers. So, and I don't understand the basics of hacking and how to prevent it. In the house, I have a laptop that's plugged into the world. And so when I send stuff or do emails, I do that on the laptop. And I'm at the office here now in downtown Charlottesville. I keep an office here where I come every day at midday to get away from the house. After I write, for 3 or 4, 5 hours sometimes in the morning at home, I need to get away. After you write for about 4 hours nonstop, you got to take a break. My brain is mush, and I can't wait to get to town, come to the office here, spend a couple of hours taking care of business. I'm at the office now because the internet connection is much better here than at home. We have a satellite system at home. We live way out in the boondocks, and it's not always strong. And then I'm downtown for lunch and golf or friends or whatever. It's a very rough life.
What?
I know you guys feel sorry for me.
No,
So do you do your
I'm enjoying it.
you do your research at the office or at home and then print it and take it over, because you can't just remember all that stuff while you're writing?
Read the research. I'd say half of it's done at home on the laptop there. I print a lot of stuff off the internet and keep it in files. Not very well organized. About half the research is done here on a faster internet connection. But I do it in both places, and oftentimes, even now when I'm at home working on a novel, if I have a question about, I need a hotel in Berlin, okay, real place. I just use the cell phone. Cell phone's right there. Bam, you got the answer in, Wikipedia in 10 seconds. And it's amazing how much, as you know, data information is at our fingertips. So I'm always doing research like that. Quick stuff. If I get into the heavier legal research, I'm far too lazy for that and far too out of touch. So I'll hire a UVA law student. UVA has this incredible law school, and these kids are really, really smart. And I have a contact in the law school. And so over the years, I've used several UVA students to do my research. They give me these beautifully written briefs, about whatever I want to know. And oftentimes I'll just take the brief and scrub out their name, add my name, stick it in the novel, and everybody thinks I'm a legal genius, and it's just plagiarizing.
That's Portia in this book. That's Portia.
Yeah. I like Portia. Portia's going to be around for another book or two. I like her a lot.
Yeah.
Well, there's still, and I would probably, you need to go somewhere else in a minute, but race, of course, still has this. This is not at all a time to kill racial violence, but there's still some can't get away from that, obviously, in Mississippi or rural parts. And one of the scenes that I thought was meaningful to me was the unusual at that time. Of course, this was again set back 1985. You said
1990.
1990. Yeah, A Time to Kill 85, and this is 1990. But was how Jake and Carla would have lunch, have interracial social meet, which was still unusual back then, and just intentionally do that, or go to some of the predominantly African American restaurants intentionally and do that sort of thing too, which I think is still, that's still just important to intentionally do those sorts of things and still just be part of a family of God, all of us. I remember in 1969, as far as I know, our house had the first interracial social party in Tupelo. I had a friend of mine, Frank Dowsing, who was a great athlete, Mississippi State All-American. You may remember, a football player. And I saw him at a high school basketball game, and with his girlfriend. And I said, would y'all like to come over to the house afterwards? We're having some people over. And he said, sure. They came over. We played pool, just had a good time, about 10 of us, and didn't think anything of it. And the next Monday, my mother went into the hairdresser, and conversation just stopped. And she said, well, what are you talking about? And one lady said, Francis, I've been taking up for you. I told them you had no idea Jack Jr. was going to bring those folks over to your house. And she said, she said, well, she said, that's true. He knew he didn't have to ask me whether to do it or not. And I was proud of my parents' point of view, of course, back then. But those are real, those things really happening.
You know, after The Time to Kill, after the trial is over, and after Jake won, Carl Lee was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Jake, I forget the exact scene, but Jake realized that, you know, Carl Lee and his wife and family would go back to their neck of the woods, and Jake and Carla would go to their home, wherever that would be. Their house would burn down, but they would be in Clanton, and they may not see each other again because they were of different races. And so Jake became determined to do something about that, and to invite Carl Lee and others to his house for barbecues and, you know, drinks or whatever. And so he started doing that after A Time to Kill.
That was an interesting part of that book, was that he thought that he was so progressive, and the reason Carl Lee wanted him as his lawyer because he wasn't.
Yeah.
And that realization that you're not really, you think you're doing well, and you're not really doing nearly as well as you think, for me, that was a big moment in that book when I was reading through it, because I kind of felt that, I always kind of felt like I'm doing good. And then I realized maybe everybody doesn't really think that. You got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to mention about the book, John, other than just, I know you're proud of it. You should. I hope you're proud of it. I'm proud of it for you. Really, I'll just come back to what I said very first. Really, this may be my favorite of all your books, really.
Well, good to hear, Jack. Listen, my pleasure. Always fun visiting with you guys, and hope to see you around the corner next year with another book.
How many are you writing this next year? You seem to be writing more than one a year these days.
You know, I've been doing 2 a year. I'll do, I'm working on a short one now, a sports book that might come out in the wintertime. If I can get the story right. I mean, I got to do something every morning from 7 to 10. That's my job, you know? So certainly a legal thriller for a year from now. Maybe another short book in the wintertime.
Don't forget to, if you go back to Jake, don't forget to wrap up some things that you didn't really wrap up in this book for me. I'm dying to know some answers. So it may take a few years, but I want you to somehow weave it into the storyline and let me know how people are doing.
I've thought about that. There are a lot of hanging threads with this story, and you know, they need to be wrapped up in the future. I'm very much aware of that. I've already been thinking. Really,
I feel like we hadn't gone to that harmonic note at the end of the music yet. I've got to get a resolve there somewhere.
I'm with you.
Well, from a young John Grisham to middle-aged John Grisham, thanks for coming back to Reed's Gumtree Bookstore. We'll see you next time. Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys. See y'all down the road. Take care.
See you. Thanks.